Good. All right. So we're going to start with the video. Like normal, we'll pause and talk a little bit about it. Please pay attention. Other than that, nothing too crazy. Unfortunately, my computer is being dumb again, so volume is going to come from up there. So it'll be on this remote this time. You might turn it down. I think it's pretty high. Yeah, put it about 50. Keep going. Put it about 15. We'll start there. All right, so go ahead and play. It might be muted on there. All right, go ahead and pause that. So, what do we know about kind of execution before this time, like back in history? Do we know some kind of forms of execution? Okay, beheading, right? And that's up here. Kitten.
Something that, if I remember correctly, happened in the Chinese. They basically tied your arms and legs to a horse, and they had them run in different directions. It would be
Okay. Drawn and quartered, absolutely. Olivia? Stoning them. Virgo? Burning them at the stake. Yep. Bronze bowl, so you could get put in a bowl, metal bowl that would heat up until you died. Olivia? Mm-hmm. Absolutely right. Hanging.
Gutting them while they were still alive.
Okay, gutting them while they were still alive. Yes, you're right. Torture, basically, right? These are not great ways. Got one more, kid? Whip, yes. So, with that in mind, right, all those ways of being executed, does it make sense then that nobles and maybe these more special people got their heads cut off? What, it was quick, right? Not as painful. Okay, absolutely. So, back in the day, that's what this beheading was used for, was for these noble people, for these quote unquote special people. And it was because most of the common people got tortured to death, right? That's essentially what it was. All right, go ahead and continue. All right, go ahead and pause. So before we get into it, they're about to discuss a little bit about this. What is kind of the overall goal of the French Revolution?
Uh, become a republic.
Okay, become a republic. Absolutely. What does that mean for the people?
A little more freedom. They're not ruled over by one person.
Absolutely. More freedom. What's that big kind of word that we've talked about? Absolutely. On the right track. Absolutely. That one word. Equality, right? Equality. And the idea with the guillotine and the creator of it was that what does the guillotine do? No matter who's in there, it kills them, right? It doesn't matter if this is a noble, if this is some special person, or a commoner. It's going to cut their head off the same. And that kind of idea of equality is one of the things that made the guillotine popular, and is one of the reasons that he really created it. Was in the pursuit of that. Go ahead and keep that going. All right, go ahead and pause there. Okay. Now, why would there be a want to transition from this kind of, because beheading does the same thing, right? With the axe or a sword, still getting your head cut off, right? But what would be some benefits to move to like a guillotine? What could happen with the sword?
Not so the executioner's clumsy. He won't
Okay.
drop or throw the sword.
Yep. Executioner messes up, human error. Yeah, he might not cut the head off, right? Virgo, do you have something? You could miss getting.
It won't always be a clean cut. It won't be a quick death if it's not a clean cut.
Absolutely. Okay, yeah, so a couple more. Very, very good.
Less human guilt.
Perfect, right? Because cutting somebody's head off with a sword or axe, that's, regardless of if they bag the head, whatever, that's pretty personal. The act of swinging that sword and cutting somebody's head off. But if you're in a guillotine and you're just pulling a lever, that kind of takes that quite a bit away from it. And we'll elaborate on that idea in a minute, but very, very good thought.
It was always quick and clean with the guillotine.
Absolutely right. All right, go ahead and go get. Go ahead and pause it there. Okay, so obviously right there the video said that they are celebrities, correct? Does anybody in here know how executioners, maybe before this time, kind of in that medieval era, were treated?
Like the devil.
Okay, like the devil. Like they were basically separated from everybody else. They were kind of treated as outcasts, weren't really allowed to be around other people.
People most of the time scared of them because they had so much blood on their hands.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, right? So they were, not really known to I mean, they were known to the public, but they were kept far away from. Where obviously here, this is a very stark contrast, right? Now we are celebrating these people.
Do you think the kids accidentally cut some of their fingers off because they were being idiots?
I'm sure it happened at some point, but we'd hope that wouldn't happen too much. But yes, so just a very stark contrast, and a lot of it could be simply because it wasn't, cutting a head off anymore. It was pulling a lever. Um, but for whatever reason, that kind of evolution happened, and these people were treated much better. All right, go ahead. Go ahead and pause there. What do we think about that? Sounds fake? Can't speak?
That's cool, and also
Muscle spasms kind of thing?
kind of like what happens when a snake gets its head cut off. The snake can still open its mouth, but it's not going to speak.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. And this is something, one of our groups, when we group up here, one of you guys is going to look into this a little bit more. If there is consciousness, if that whole thing does exist. But definitely kind of a weird thing. And one thing that's important to remember, so they're going to bring up a story. I think they end up disproving it in this, but you're going to read, especially that group, and we'll hear about it. Um, Remember to take some of this stuff that are kind of these stories that may have been passed along. Remember to take those with a little bit of a grain of salt, right? Because what's that super famous line that Marie Antoinette supposedly said?
Let them eat cake.
Let them eat cake, right? And we learned that it really wasn't that. It could have been something similar, but definitely wasn't that. And you'll kind of see that in some of these more like folklorish facts, that maybe they get bolstered or get changed over time. And that's possibly the case with this, but still definitely interesting and something we'll learn a little bit more about. Go ahead.
Oxygen taken in by the human body. Once oxygen stops being supplied to the brain, such as when the head is separated from the heart and lungs, the brain shuts down. However, there's a small window of time where oxygen and blood that's present in the brain can still be used. The rumors of decapitated heads still being conscious gained public attention when in 1793 an executioner's assistant slapped the face of the decapitated head of Charlotte Corday. She was charged and sentenced to execution for the murder of
Who was Charlotte Corday? Pause.
claimed to see her.
Who was? Yep, she's the lady that stabbed Marat. They incorrectly say husband here, but it was Jean Paul Marat. Very good. Go ahead.
Cheeks flush and turn red with anger. This story led doctors and enthusiasts to ask decapitated heads to blink, speak, or show signs of consciousness. Spoiler alert, no severed heads showed any sign of consciousness. The experiments with decapitated heads were put to a stop in the 20th century. However, studies on rats found that brain activity in the decapitated head may continue for up to 4 seconds after the head is separated from the body. Much to the dismay of guillotine enthusiasts, all things must come to an end. Slowly, capital punishment dwindled during the 20th century. However, there was a brief resurgence of the guillotine during the Nazi regime. During the 1930s, 20 guillotines were ordered to be placed in cities across Germany. According to Nazi records, the guillotines were used to execute over 16,000 people between 1933 and 1945. After World War II, the guillotine was still used in France until 1977 for capital punishment. The last person to be executed by the guillotine was a convicted murderer named Amida Jandubi. A few years later, in 1981, France abolished capital punishment altogether. Before his death, Guillotine became incredibly distraught with how the device he envisioned and helped create became a symbol of death and terror.
Go ahead and pause there. Okay, so this will be the last kind of thing we touch on with the video. So, Guillotine, however you say his actual name, right? He created this with this kind of idealistic, enlightened idea of equality for death, right? And what did it turn into? Right? And what was kind of that major event during the French Revolution that made it have this kind of stigma, or we remember it that way? Reign of Terror, right? And that's when Robespierre cut off tens of thousands of people's heads with this, really for simply not agreeing with him on stuff. Um, but you can kind of understand that, right? He really thought he was doing a good thing with the creation of this, and then it just became this symbol of death. And obviously that can play a pretty big role. All right, you're good now. Next, if you guys will get out your Chromebooks, get on Classroom, and then if anybody has that half sheet of questions, yeah, absolutely. If you need to do it on your phone, absolutely. Just some way you can access Google Classroom. And then if you Virgo, if you want to find a question we haven't done yet. Okay, let me get that up here for you, bud. Virgo got it. Don't worry about it.
You haven't answered the question.
All right. Give me 1 second, bud. What's your name? Chad.
Yeah.
All right. Nice to meet you. I'm Mr. Elton. Get that going. I can take it from you, bud. Thank you, man. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Virgo, you got a question? What do we got? Okay, do we hear that? If you had to live in another time period, what would you choose? Who wants to start?
I'll start. I would say the 50s, because isn't that when like people went made at those cute diners?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and the ladies, those ladies were like those poodle skirts. I knew you were gonna. Yeah, I live in.
Okay. Virgo?
I live in the 1700s.
Okay, why?
Because I think that's so cool there. There's a lot of
Is there a place, certain area in the world you'd want to live in?
probably
England? Okay. Very good. Go ahead. 70s or 80s? Any reasoning?
like they dress pretty cool.
Okay.
And something really fashion.
Okay.
The 60s, the hair.
The hair in the 60s? All right. Who else? 80s and 90s? Reasoning? Okay. Okay. What'd you say? Now? Now? I understand that, right? We got it pretty easy nowadays. Ain't too much. No one? Okay. All right. Interesting. Interesting.
That's not a bad time period.
Garrett. 70s and 80s. Why?
Drive older trucks.
Okay. Drive older trucks. All right. Listen up. Listen up. Listen up to your classmates. All right. Who's next? Anybody over here?
Well, in the 60s because the hair.
Okay. 60s hair. Okay. Okay. Olivia?
1775 to 1780 because.
Okay. Understood. Understood. Go ahead. Reasoning? Cars. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Fellas over here? 90s. Okay. Music. I like that. 80s, 90s. Anything why? Cars and music.
Just for
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Yeah. What time period, kitten? Greece. Okay. Like.
I don't remember. No. It's so I can actually learn how to read a lot.
I think that would be interesting, kitten. I think that would be interesting. All right. Anybody else over here? 1840s. For what reason? All right. Okay. Very good. All right. Do we have that Google Classroom opened? Hopefully you guys can get that assignment pulled up. I'll get it pulled back up here. Yep, guillotine. Yes, absolutely. All right.
There's no right.
If there's more people that pulled the lever and you want them
Is it your
to pull the lever,
decision?
yeah.
Okay. Well, then we're going to get into this. All right. So, right now, bear with me for a second here. I'm going to do a little bit of explaining, okay? So, as you see on your device or up here, that big question that we're going to answer today is the guillotine humane, right? Now, we're going to do this through, you good, Brady?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, focus back in, focus back in. So we're going to do this through looking at a few articles. Now, while we're kind of going through these articles, I'm going to have you split into groups of, I think 4 groups of 4 and then 1 group of 3 is how we're going to do it. So we'll do that in a second. But as you're going through this, this is our big assignment for the day, okay? So, do we all know what a thesis is or a claim?
Yes.
What is it? Somebody give me a brief example. Or definition, excuse me. Okay, so if you're writing a paper, it's what it's about. When we're answering a question, absolutely, you're right. The way that I would word it would use the word opinion, right? It's your opinion about something. So when you're writing a paper, you're saying, this is what I'm going to write about, and then you finish up with it, right? So that is what we're going to do today, folks. That is what we're going to do today. And the reason we're doing this is once we get to our big kind of summative assessment, that big test at the end, it's going to be exactly like this, okay? But it's going to be answering a different question that was the French Revolution successful. So I wanted to give you guys kind of a chance to work through this type of process, and that way you have a better understanding when that comes. So you're going to advance a thesis or claim, and it's basically yes or no, right? And I don't care how you answer this question. It's completely up to you. Because you are going to then go to 6 to 8 sentences that provide reasoning and evidence, right? Back up what you say. Don't just say something. Make sure you have stuff to back it up. So I'm going to keep that for right now. I'll further explain it in a second here. Go ahead and, are you 4 together? Okay. How do we want to go? 3 back here? 4 here work? Garrett? Shannon, you go with him? Okay. 4 and 4? Is that good, girls? Okay. All right. So if you scroll down on there, there are 5 different documents, all right? Now, what I want you to do with these documents, fairly simple. I just need 5 takeaways, right? So I'll go ahead and give you guys the first primary source. Good. I will give you the second primary source. History of the guillotine right here. Consciousness after beheading over here. And then is there use for it today here? Okay? So I'm going to give you some time to kind of go through this document. And basically what I want you to do, just pull 5 takeaways from it. We'll get back together as a class and share what we found. So go ahead and get to work on that. And I will turn this on. I'm sorry. No. Yep. Just come up with 5 things you find in the article. Or you guys have a source. Yeah. Bring that because we'll talk about it, right? That doesn't make any sense, does it? So, all right, we all get into our articles. You finding it? You guys good? I was there. Okay. We'll talk about it. Focus on this. I know. Focus on this for right now. I promise you, get through this. We'll talk about it. Garrett, you find it? You find the article? Okay. All right. Any questions with comprehension, that kind of stuff? Please let me know. And I'll kind of be around. Does anybody want anything to write on to keep these 5 things? Okay. You guys want something to write on? You guys can use whiteboard if you want. You want a piece of paper?
I'm selecting 5 main points. So would you consider the convoy using drums to drown out the king's voice? You have to write it down. Actually, I'll write. You guys can write them. Would you consider that?
What are you talking to me? I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Would you consider the convoy using drums to drown out the king's voice?
Yeah, absolutely. For you guys, I know it's a little bit more difficult. I want you guys to try and focus pretty hard on the actual guillotine part, and kind of what surrounded it more so. Yes, absolutely. But that's fine. You can bring part of that. But for the rest of them, try to focus more on the like. You do whatever you want.
The first one, they use drums.
What?
For the convoy that was.
We'll do that later. Right now, just with that article that I gave you guys, give me 5 takeaways from it, okay? As a group, right? You want a piece of paper to write it down? What is it? Okay. All right, bring that in. Bring that with you. Very good. Fellas, how we doing? Pretty good. Getting some stuff together? Okay, Michelle. You'll be okay. You got overalls on. All right, get to work. Come on. Let's go. What's up, boss? Say what? You're not illiterate. I've seen your work before. All right. Keep going. I see the. Confident?
Convoy.
Convoy, CONVOY. Girls, we doing okay? Girls, we got 5. Virgo? Okay. Fellas, make sure we're getting through. How we doing over here? Good. Kitten, how we doing? What we got, big dog?
King.
Okay. Kitten, how we doing? Got 3. Okay. Keep rolling.
It's more like asking. It's like opinion on should they bring it back. Like is it reliable?
Just what you find. Just literally facts. Basically, right? Because everybody else is reading different articles. So just to give them a general overview of what is in that article. Yep. Absolutely.
Women, I'm telling you, the women. It laughed and they
Keep working.
so funny. For number 2, we're reading out of KTWS still.
But King Louis was executed in 1792.
What's up, kid?
The pike is basically a really long spear, right?
Yeah. It's basically just a sharpened stick. Good, Shannon?
Yeah.
What's up, bud? We'll get through this. We'll get through that, and then you'll be able to kind of relax a little bit more.
Wait. Tuesday, girls are hosting their first.
Yeah, but then it's at.
Where's it going to be here?
Yeah, the first game.
Here?
All right, fellas, we done? About done?
I got a fact.
Come on, give me something.
I got
You got one?
Yeah, I got
One. Y'all need one, and then one of you needs 2. I know you got his on.
I got modern day execution of drugs and lethal injection. Put down that it's not reliable. People, it takes a while.
That's what you want. I was there. How many you got?
I got 4.
Okay. Garrett, you got 1?
I got 2.
You got 2? All right, perfect. Olivia, you guys win. One more? Okay.
Spoke of the words by King Louis XVI, who said, I die innocent of all the crimes laid to my charge. I pardon those words who have occasioned me, that's a weird way to spell accused my death, and I pray to God that my blood you are going to shed may never be visited on France. He said that while proceeding on horseback with a man that had That's a lot to write down. Why can't we do this on docs?
Because you're just sharing it. You can't do it on docs. If you want to just straight read that off there, that's good.
Okay.
This is just to keep your thoughts in order, right? And you guys have a difficult one. Give me 3. Just get one more good one, and we'll come back together. So good. Okay. You guys is pretty difficult to read, but you're doing a good job. Yeah, just give me one more real quick, and then we'll come back together. Okay. You good?
No.
Do you have one? Okay.
Do you think they mounted Louis' head on the pike?
I don't think they mounted Louis. They mounted Marie Antoinette's though.
I thought Marie Antoinette had like a really nice, beautiful carriage.
That's when they were escaping.
Yeah, that's when they were escaping.
No, when they were being executed, they were just in wooden cars.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Is that your third one? That's fine. All right. All right. Does everybody have their facts? You don't need to have 5 yourself. You guys. All right, go ahead. I got you. I understand. I respect it. You guys are good. Girls good. Fellas, we good over here? Okay. Get her done.
She beat me to the punch.
That's on. All right. If y'all still need one, we'll come to you later. All right. Let's come back together here. 2 more? You can keep working while other people are talking, okay? All right. Now, we are going to, can I get your attention? We're going to share these with our peers now. Does any group want to start? I saw Virgo's hand first. All right, Virgo, what did you guys read? Okay, so consciousness after beheading. What'd you guys find? Okay, let's talk about that, right? Now, anatomically, would your cheeks flush if you got your head cut off and blood was running out of it? Would they flush? No, right? It should go the opposite way, right? With blood rushing out. So, definitely an anomaly, right? And then the angry face. Now, obviously, that is something that has been shared. That's that popular story, and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. Like, yes, that story is out there. We have to take it with some grain of salt, but definitely intriguing, definitely interesting. What else? Okay. Okay. Right. What's the kind of famous one? Has anybody in here butchered a chicken?
Oh, a chicken around with the head cut off, right?
Yeah, right. When you cut a chicken's head off, it runs around, like straight runs from you. Um, and that's kind of that idea, right? That there's still something going on, whatever it may be, that keeps it going. Very good. What else? Okay. Good. Anything else? Good now?
Has anyone been called a chicken run around with the head cut off? It was used as an insult in my family because we would do stupid stuff.
I feel like I probably did back in the day on the farm. All right. Very good, girls. All right. Who's next? Olivia? Hey, listen up, folks. And him. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's stop there. Okay. So obviously, King Louis kind of amplified this feeling, right? But what were these back in this time period? What were executions? Entertainment, right? And we kind of had this weird obsession with violence and death as human beings, and you can look at it throughout the years, right? In ancient times, it was the gladiators in ancient Rome, right? Watching people fight to the death. In this time period, it was watching people get their heads cut off. Now, what is our form of violence and death? WWE, TV, right? Movies, video games, absolutely, right? So there's always been this kind of weird curiosity that we have as humans with this violence, this death. Very good. All right, next one. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So again, he was the one that said basically took no responsibility for his actions. And that's something we kind of discussed earlier. And then obviously with the execution of such a high profile member, good security was required. Next. Garrett, you've been having your hand up. You want to go? All right. What'd you guys read?
Fourth generation executioner for whom punishment was a family business.
Okay. What'd you find?
And why is McKenzie getting off?
All right. Do you have a question? Sorry about that.
Something other than a question.
What's that?
I someone a trailer last night. Now I get to get my Dutch coat.
Attaboy.
Hopefully, we're gonna go see if the guy
Family gatherings, that's like all she
Good.
because my dad's supposed to call him. We're gonna look
My
at it.
dad,
Very cool,
His
man.
buddy says it's not a speck of rust on it.
Hey, there you
The
go.
guy's been driving it.
yeah, we own 132 acres.
That's cool.
Only thing that's wrong
There's
is
land I
the,
still haven't even been.
I don't know if it's the scent. I don't know what it is, but something's wrong. Just gasket.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool. Well, good deal, man. How's this coming along?
Was it bitchweed or actual?
How's that?
I don't know. All my ideas went bye-bye, so there you go. All my ideas went bye-bye after I started thinking. Well, yeah.
You good. Hey, this is whatever you think it is, right? This is, as long as you can back up what you're saying, it's good, right?
Is it, 5 to 8 sentences?
6 to 8, yeah?
5.
No, 6 to 8.
He's like,
Yeah, I know, yours are good. You did a good job. Aaron, you done? Virgo, feeling better now? Ish? Ish? Yours was good, Virgo.
this is a serious one. Why is there 2 Australians on Australia? We understand it's Australia.
Because, you see all these other ones? Continent's the white one. Australia is its own continent. That's why. So I see like North America, South America, Asia, Europe, Africa.
And I'm like, well, I'm just gonna say something.
You know, I thought about it too. I didn't know what it was, but that's what it is.
Like, they're important, but we don't get to the United States.
Yeah. All right, fellas, we all good? Girls? Good. All right, couch crew. How are you?
I've only got 5 sentences.
You done?
Yeah. Pretty close.
Okay.
Yes, I can choose something.
All right, we'll keep working. We're just gonna come back together for a brief discussion. Okay. Alrighty, real quick. If I can get your attention, phones down for a second here. What did we think? What did we put down as this, as our thesis? What do we have for reasoning? Let's just kind of discuss this a little bit. So what do we got? No? Okay, so it's not humane. Okay, why is that?
Because there have been a lot of quicker, easier ways that aren't painful.
Okay.
Like the injection is quick and painless if you have
The right one.
the right one.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, very good. Kid, I saw your hand first.
Okay, so I say it is. Oh, well, I put it is humane. Now to run off kind of what Andrew said, yeah, but you have to have the right drug in order for it to be faster. It's going to be slow and painful, and no one wants to die a slow, painful death.
Good.
A guillotine is 90% guaranteed to remove your head from your shoulders without pain. You're not going to know your head has been removed till you're looking in that basket.
Okay. Very good. Lydia?
I put that it wasn't humane, but that's because I put that capital punishment isn't humane at all.
Okay.
But I put that if one had to be chosen, it was most likely one of the most humane ways.
Okay.
Because of how quick it is, especially with injection and stuff, how easily it can
go wrong.
Yeah, and then you can't read them.
Yep. Very good. Anything else? Okay. Yeah, what we got?
If they have more levers for the guillotine to pull, like the firing squad they do for prisoners, then that would be more humane, I think.
Okay. So
then you would be able to sleep at night and not know if you.
yeah, right. Where the guillotine made it less personal, making it even, so I don't know if I'm the one. Good. Very good. All right. What else we think? Yay, nay?
I thought it was probably gonna. I don't think that the death penalty is humane, but out of all the forms of execution, I thought that the guillotine was because it's relatively quick and not very painful.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. Any thoughts over here?
Make sure to sharpen the guillotine.
Yes. Make sure to sharpen it. Virgo, what we think? Okay. Okay, yeah, and that's something that I've gotten a few times today, right? That it was humane back then, it was probably the most humane, but maybe not so much today. Very good.
I put that's a little bit of both, because like the idea of it would have been humane, but having an audience and making it entertaining wasn't.
Okay, so the execution itself is fairly humane, but not the whole spectacle that was brought up around it? Very good. Good.
Real quick, run off of what Tony said. It depends on the time frame, honestly. Because back in France during that time frame, yeah, it probably would be one of the more humane things. Lethal injection for this time frame, I don't think is humane. I think the firing squad would be like one of the better ways to die.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
quick, as long as you're
That's fair. I mean, yeah, that's definitely fair. It's just, that's one that's pretty stigmatized in society, I believe. All right. Any other thoughts on this?
You could choose if you're put on the death penalty, you can choose.
I don't think anybody has been executed besides lethal injection since they kind of brought it back in 2014. I don't think they've had anybody besides that.
Okay, I can tell you one thing. You get one last meal, though.
Yeah, you do get a last meal.
Not making like crazy, outrageous food things and not eating it. Texas hasn't executed anybody in a little bit, but they still have the electric chair.
Yeah, the electric chair. I would be shocked if they, no pun intended. I would be shocked if they used it because that's like electric chair is pretty barbaric.
Yeah, you're strapped into a chair with electrodes all over the place.
And sometimes it doesn't work. All right, hey, real quick, bring it back together. All right, now, hypothetical here, right? Hypothetical. Say that the guillotine does get brought back. It is our form of capital punishment, okay? What does that affect? Do you think it affects how many people we put on death row? Do you think that affects the speed of which prisoners get on or off death row? What are our thoughts here?
I think the death row would fill up quicker, probably.
Fill up quicker?
Yeah.
Why is that?
And more people, because
Okay.
if they did certain crimes and didn't get charged for it, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Olivia?
Part of me thinks that like nothing would change.
Okay.
Because like you're still killing someone, but then also part of me thinks that like they would be able to kill people faster.
Yeah.
A lot easier.
That
doesn't mean that they will, because like there's so many people on death row that are just gonna sit there until they die.
Yep. I'm not sure if it was in your article. Did you see anything about price of what lethal injection costs? It's like $1 million. Like it's like big time money. Or if I just have a giant blade, hit that lever and it cuts somebody's head off, that's quite a bit cheaper.
All you'd really have to pay for is to sharpen it.
Yeah, right, and pay the salary if who's doing it. Do you think the perception of capital punishment would change from the public when instead of just kind of and maybe injecting drugs and having somebody fall asleep forever, obviously, but to, cutting people's heads off, do you think public would kind of maybe stand up against the death penalty a little bit more?
I think more states would
Okay, yeah.
Just like kind of like dismiss the fact when they're just like getting injected.
Yeah.
But when you're like actually cutting someone's head off, I think more people would have.
Okay, very good. Very good.
The difference between someone, and someone just pumping a drug into their system.
Mhm. All right.
I was referring to like randomized.
Very good. Very good. All right. Any other thoughts on guillotines, capital punishment, any of it? What we got?
It's a question about the guillotine. How many different blades do you think they tried before they got that slanted blade?
Oh, I'm sure they tried a few. I'm sure there were multitude. I'm sure there were more than 10. I'm sure at the beginning when they were starting to come up with this design, there were a lot of messed up
How many?
executions. All right.
For the guillotine. Failed.
I think it's very educational.
Maybe tomorrow. All right. Make sure you get those turned in. Turn them in. We good over here, crew?